I'm Liam Dillon from Middlecap Real Estate. We developed this building, Southworks. This was our first building in the UK. We've got another one, so we're still quite small. So we have 2 projects in central London. We're actually a Slovak company, so we've got buildings in other jurisdictions. We've got projects in Berlin and Bratislava, and a little bit in the United Arab Emirates. But we've been in the UK since 2018 with this building. You probably have noticed as you came here that this location, this exact street, is not a particularly established office location. And the consent that was existing on this site was for a residential building. You've probably already realised I'm not going to be massively technical, which is what you're all here to hear about, but hopefully this is a little bit of a useful view from another angle. So at the time as well, 2018, 2019, this was being designed. There was a lot of, in the office world, there was a lot of focus on increasing density, increasing the capability of the building to deal with more and more people. So 1 to 8 had gone from being a sort of maybe you need to do that to, of course, that's what you should have as a base case for MEP occupancy, toilets, everything. Everybody thought that buildings were going to be used super intensively. So that was the context in which we were designing this building. So we wanted to sort of make a mark for ourselves so that we could then go on and purchase other buildings and be taken a little bit more seriously as new entrants to the UK market. And we wanted to have a kind of a sort of DNA or a USP for ourselves. So the angle we were coming up with was to try and make a building that combined the best of construction craft and sort of value in materials and detailing, and also meaningful technological solutions. And so by that I meant we were kind of conscious that it can be easy to get drawn into gimmicks with technical solutions, new technologies. We wanted to make sure we didn't fall into that trap, if possible, sort of individually been down in that route before. So that was our sort of thinking at the beginning, where we started from. We had a bit of planning work to do with the scheme. So this is the plan of the building that had consent when we arrived. And we did a couple of things. Again, you might not be too interested in this, but we moved the core to the back of the building over there. We put the stairs and bathrooms against the facade so we could have natural light into them. This is kind of part of this idea of the fundamentals of the building. And then we were hoping to amplify it and complement it with technology, which we're coming on to shortly. So this is kind of a snapshot from the receptions. These are hand-cast Italian glass bricks that are forming the entrance screen. So hopefully you noticed that when you came in. It cost an absolute fortune. Took years off my life organising this. Don't ever do anything like it, but it does look quite nice. The rest of the building, you can see exposed concrete. We wanted to, the services are exposed. This area has a lot of warehouses in it, so the feeling was kind of, there's an established, people coming here will accept a sort of grittiness, a warehouse aesthetic, so that's what we were trying to play into. Obviously, we can use less materials that way, and this is that construction craft idea that we were talking about. So we wanted the shell of the building to be robust and well put together and come across that way, and then the sort of the next step was this technological innovation that we wanted to introduce to try and make this building really stand out, because we are off-market. We're in a slightly off-market location. It was the vacancy rate when we were doing this in Southwark was about 3%, so it was a popular area. It seemed like a good idea to put an office here at the time, but definitely it was always challenging to be on this street. So we came up with, again, 2019, we need this to be a smart building, and we must have sat in 365 meetings that year saying, what is a smart building? What does smart mean? Nobody ever really knocked that answer out the park, including ourselves. But we were, again, back to that, what was the general themes going on in offices at the time? We were talking about health and well-being. We're trying to make the experience as easy as possible. There's a whole community piece around trying to build a little ecosystem in your building, a network of occupiers, environmental credentials, and then I think I just heard Nav saying there at the end, the idea of you have a building that can be optimized, you're not paying to keep the lights and the heating on in an office that's not there, not being used rather, and a resilient, robust building that would be future-proofed. So these are all the things that we were looking to do. And then we obviously had to try and work out a way of doing it. So just another bit of context. We bought this site in 2018. We started knocking it down in January 2019. And we were going quite well through the construction. We had most of the frame. We're probably up to level 3 when the COVID lockdown hit. So that actually didn't slow us down construction-wise too much because we were still an open site. We were out in the open air. But we did have a pause and a rethink around the design. And in putting this together, I looked back at some of our marketing material at the time, and it's a bit questionable, some of it, because we were going to have a thermal camera in the reception, and there was a big emphasis on touch-free access and things like that. But in general, we sort of thought we've got really good provision of fresh air, good HVAC system, we've got the openable windows, and we have, by this point, we had an emerging partnership of bGrid as the commissioning software and Office app as a building app. So we were very focused that there was going to be a building app for the users, for the occupiers, that would give them access to all the information they could ever want and control over their own environment. And we finished this building then in May 2021. So, what am I saying here? So when we came to bGrid, we knew we were going to have a BMS system by Priva, and bGrid have, I think, pre-existing relationship with Priva, so they were quite good. But we were looking for useful information. So as back to this kind of meaningful technological idea, we didn't want to have gimmicks. We didn't, the app saying you can invite somebody from a different company to lunch. That's brilliant, but lots of people won't be interested, won't care about that. And lots of people won't be interested in a lot of this. But having access to the information of what the building is doing and why a building might feel the way it does to be in, for us, fell into the useful information category. So we were looking for, or what bGrid could provide for us was information about occupancy, how the space is being used. Again, would never actually happened, but we were certainly saying to people, you can be at home, you can look on your app, you can see if the office is busy, do I want to come in or not? Is there space for me to be 2-3 meters away? Can I be away from people? So that was definitely something that got traction with occupiers as they were coming in, but in reality, it didn't survive contact with reality. Nobody really used that feature in that way. And then we have all the usual sort of environmental metrics. So temperature, humidity. We have a few carbon dioxide monitors on each floor, and also the sound. And so from our point of view, the world of the BMS and the facilities management just became a lot more open to us, because we could, when our tenant tells us it's a bit hot, we can open this and go, yes, it is a bit hot, and somebody should be doing something about it. Probably, I think this was quite an innovative building when it was delivered. We shouldn't say things like this, but it really was innovative because some of it just didn't work. for quite a while. So bGrid has been very useful for us in highlighting problems in the base build, as opposed to, we haven't necessarily got that quickly to the optimization and smooth running of the building. It's a sort of ongoing story. But it certainly, we have a couple of characters in this building who have very specific requirements, and we've been able to deal with them in a really transparent way to say, you might feel like it's 21 degrees, but it is 18. We can, we've got the evidence of that. So it's been useful, and that has actually, in some cases, we've had the BMS telling us what the temperature is, bGrid telling us what the temperature is, and then that person might have had their own thermometer in the room to just confirm that that's what the temperature was. So it's it is a bit more of there's that objective, this is probably true now. This kind of thing is good for us. Obviously, this is from the bGrid dashboard. Obviously, this is kind of ramming home that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday thing in terms of the number of people coming in when they're using the building. This is only a 70,000 square foot building. It's probably like 1,000 occupiers if we're completely full. So we're probably not the perfect building to make full use of all of these features, because our building management team probably can't sort of pull back on a Monday and a Friday in a way that a tower might be able to, with presenting the same data kind of thing. So it's good for us to have seen it. It was always, and there will be times when we can make changes and tweaks to how we're doing things to reflect what's going on. But we probably do have to recognize, especially at this moment in time, the size of the building, the number of occupiers we have. We probably can't make use of absolutely everything. So what we were looking for is to understand what's going on in the building and where there are issues like the temperature, CO2. CO2 is a useful one because everybody understands it and they open the window or they move out of the meeting room or whatever they need to do to sort of get away from that red alert on the CO2. I think one thing that we underestimated and would do slightly differently in the future is if you put new technology like this, or as was new technology in, the building team and the facilities management team need to really buy into the fact that it's there and you need to have the right setup process that they understand, that they buy into. This is how this is going to work. This is the point of this. And we probably didn't do that enough. So there's been a few instances where we've had maybe this building maintained and managed in a very short-term way that would have been more suitable for a building 5 years before, because we probably didn't invest the time up front with the facilities team to say, this should actually be taking a lot of the strain and a lot of the adjustment out of your day. You should be sort of watching that it's solving the problem rather than you needing to go in and adjust things. So that's been quite a learning curve. And I think that's, when you introduce new technology or the idea of new technology, you're hoping it's going to solve some problems, make current processes better. And I think we probably were a little bit guilty of dropping that in onto people who actually needed to be able to implement it and not sort of doing enough of this discussion across at the beginning. And partly that comes back a little bit to, this is a relatively small building in the scheme of London, so the facility, when you take on a managing agent, there's a pressure for you to have an engineer 3 days a week or 2 days a week. There's an assumption that this building would, in everybody's mind, that, it's 70,000 square feet, it'll just tick over, we just need somebody to come in 3 times a week, make sure everything's hunky-dory, and if somebody's a bit cold, they turn the fan coil up a bit, and hopefully that solves it. And again, it's this idea that we probably should have spent more time at the handover with everybody, getting everybody on board. These points here, selling the use case, that was quite tricky when we were marketing the building. As I said, back in 2019, what's a smart building? You're talking to a tenant who's coming out of another building been there for 10 years. You're saying, this is a smart building. You talk about all of this stuff, and they say, well, what difference does it make to me at the end of the day, really? And that's quite different occupiers have different, are receptive to that to a different level, obviously. We had really good environmental credentials, so EPCA, BREEAM outstanding. We actually went from excellent to outstanding during construction. And then we had this access to the system and for the time, an unusually high level of metering. So we had like a very good specification. Again, probably relating back to what I was just saying about making sure that we did that handover properly. Selling the use case kind of relies on you totally understanding it yourself in the first place. And that's quite hard, I think, still, even with a smart building. I think there's still some areas of smart buildings which are kind of, it's hard to be totally nailed on of what the benefit is to the occupier. That could just be me, though. You might not know more. Technology-wise, especially in the app sector, we found it very volatile. So you sign up with somebody, they get bought by somebody who squashes that app. So that is an unnecessary level of trauma and pain for us because we're not a software specialist. We don't really like unpicking those things. We don't like going back to the tenant saying, can you delete that one, upload this one, get a new ticket, etc. I think that's our other building, which is across the river, which is about twice the size and probably going to be in a much more corporate place. Our sort of feeling from that is we probably need to be in a little bit more of the established position rather than the sort of emerging technologies on that one, because our tenants here are demanding, but a firm of US lawyers or something will absolutely toast us if we can't give them access at the time they need. And again, this is back to this point. A lot of the tenants here quite excited about all the technology we have, quite keen to use it, quite keen to try and use it, at least at the beginning. But when that kind of contact with reality of, oh, I can keep changing the temperature, the novelty wears off. It kind of, is it that useful? And we've actually, when we've done the app for this building, we're now with Equium, and we stripped a lot of the features out from the original app because the tenants just said, it's not anything we use. We basically use it for access control, controlling the lights, visitor management, and we definitely don't invite each other for lunch on your app. So you can take that off. I think that might be me. Yes. So I hope that wasn't completely irrelevant to what you all came to hear about. But yeah, Nav just asked me to give a sort of context of how we came to put bGrid in. bGrid is definitely one of the success stories of all the technologies we put in here. That's, for us, the bit that works. I'm not sure our site engineer agrees because we're quite often in touch saying what's happened there. But yeah, I think that might be me. Thank you.
Any questions for Liam?
Questions? Yeah.
I've just got an obvious one. I wasn't quite sure what you told people when they said what difference would a smart building make for me as an occupier.
So we were saying that it was kind of, it was an opportunity to really optimize your environment. So you'd be able to, and remember this is right in the middle of COVID, not in the middle of COVID, but sort of very, very current concern. So we'd be saying, you're trying to get people back in, you can control who's in when, people can come in and know that there's going to be space for them, because you can, if you want to manage your workforce in and out of the office, we'll be able to give you the visibility to do that in an easier way. Obviously you can have a rota and whatnot, but so we were saying there would be that, there would be the ability to control your local environment, which everybody really liked the sound of. But again, that's one of those things where obviously the reality in an open plan office is not a particularly good idea. They quickly got to the point where it's just the office manager would control the temperature set points. If you wanted, so if you said I'm a bit cold, you have to speak to your office manager. It's not go on the app and start tweaking it. It was really, the way we presented it was kind of, there's a couple of new bits, or newish bits, access control via your phone, so you don't need the card. Your issue reporting through the app, so you can see the things being closed out, etc. But otherwise, a bigger part of it was all the stuff that would normally be happening, you will have visibility on it, and you will see that it is getting better, it's being optimized, and it's in one place. And that's something that we are carrying through on the other building, but up there we're probably pivoting more into let's have the best situation for our facilities management team, and not particularly focus on giving the occupier access. We can do reporting to the occupier, the user of the building, but actually the people who really need it, and it needs to be focused much more on, compared to what we have here, it needs to be focused much more on the people who run the building and let them optimize.
It would save them money, reduce their energy bills, control their energy.
We said it could if they paid attention to what it was telling them. And I think we had the energy price spike in this period as well, so that's quite hard to track. But yeah, no, that we definitely said that was one, and still is one of the aspirations. So,
in terms of the reduction of the energy, how are you currently monitoring that? How are you validating it?
Yeah, we're monitoring that, and we're using, we're sort of cross-referencing all the meters and the bGrid kind of. The way I look at it is bGrid is sort of telling us the performance of the space, and the BMS and the gas and electricity bills are telling us how did you make that, and the electricity is telling you how you made that happen. But what it has, I'd like to be able to stay here and say, oh yeah, and so we very quickly settled down at the perfect running level. And we're still doing that, because what it did do, which is useful, very useful, but it's probably not how you would advertise it, I understand, is it highlighted things that were wrong. So boilers not being programmed on the right schedules, even though the BMS said they were, it was kind of saying, well, something funny is going on. So it's been really useful for us in terms of problem finding. And we are making progress in sort of connecting the performance of, look, we turn the second floor HVAC off and the bill drops. Like it does, there is a correlation, yeah. But yeah.
Is that a granular meeting, or is that just you using the energy bill data you're using for, or are you actually looking at individual lights as they are, or like the whole floor you see?
So we have 2 meters. Each of these floors is split in half. So we have metering for lights and small power. And then that's why I'm saying we can cross-reference it, where we can say that bill looks very low, and then we can look back through bGrid and say, well, the lights haven't been on for 3 weeks because nobody's been in, or whatever. So, I mean, the base building as well, 2021, it's very efficient. We have the EPCA, so it's an efficient system, LED lights, DALI controlled. Everything was kind of city office spec at the time. So if the building just behaved itself, it should be quite good anyway, if you see what I mean. Demand-led HVAC, so if it doesn't get hot, if somebody's not in here, it shouldn't need a lot to keep it going, if everything's set up properly. Yeah.
Liam, if you had to do it again from today, develop this site from scratch, what would you do differently, knowing what you know now?
Well, so the number one thing would be to bring in to select a building manager or a facilities manager partner earlier on. Our business model wasn't necessarily to operate the building, so we were sort of more along the lines of it would be leased up, and then we would probably look to exit. We talked about the need, as we were doing this, to sort of focus more on the operation of a building, and I think that has carried on across over the years. The focus on operation rather than just delivery at the beginning is only getting stronger. I think we're doing the neighbours scheme on our other project. So I think even if your model is to think about leaving the building quite quickly after completion, I think compared to 2019, you now have to have a much more robust soft landing plan, facilities management, maintenance plans, predictive maintenance plans, and projected energy consumption that you measure yourself against properly, because we're expecting great things, and then we've just dealt with what's come rather than saying, where are we against this exact target? So more focus on operation. I don't think that's obviously particularly unique to us. I think everybody's talking about that, but there is we had one engineer here who left because he said nothing ever happened, and I said, that's not my feeling, but there is this challenge of it's got to be interesting enough for the people who are working on the building to feel there's something going on, but not so interesting that it's just problems all the time. So, and that's kind of where you get to this. We have a very good system, probably akin to the systems you have at 22 Bishopsgate. So if you're a building manager who's into all this, implemented this technology, you would probably go and take a job at 22 Bishopsgate than down here. So there's that kind of competition for the staff, all those kind of pieces of the puzzle. But yeah, I think it's the difference would be the focus on post-PC rather than just getting to PC. Especially with this stuff, the technology has to really bed down afterwards. And the other thing is we'd be much more hot on asking people what their licensing arrangements and costs were. But yeah, that's it. Okay. Thank you very much.